Okay, here we go. Rock and roll. So yeah, I decided that these little teasers that I'm going to do first, we can still do Q&A on them, but they won't be live Q&A until we go to the actual lessons. And so you can ask questions and start a message thread on the post, and I'll do my best to answer them. So let's start with this first one. See what It's hotter than hell, by the way. Okay, so this is not going to serve as a target, just as a reference point. Shut the fuck up. And those aren't even my dogs out yet, so. But as you can see, this will represent my center, or power line, whatever you want to call it. We're going to just start out with some basic shifting. So the lesson today actually is on weight shifting, which will include rotating the body as well as partial stepping for various reasons. So the first one I like to do usually is just kind of like a warm-up and an intro to shifting variations. Okay, knees bent, tuck the pelvis forward, turn to the right, push off the quadricep and the ball of the foot to roll down from heel to toe. Make sure to maintain the curve here, the tucked pelvis. Keep the chin down. Straighten the rear leg like a piston this way, a rolling action. Then basically go to the other side. So besides looking at my feet and my structure, you should be seeing how my reference point from the center changes without leaning forward or leaning backward, but simply by shifting the body weight. So that's rolling down from heel to toe. You can do as many of these as you like. I'd like to do at least 20 of everything. Next one we're going to do, it looks quite similar, but you just lift and set down the heels. And again, what you're looking for is tucked pelvis, chin tucked, but note how my upper body moves off of the line simply by shifting the weight. Here and here. Lifting up and setting down the heels. So at this point, there's really no rotation involved, simply lifting up and setting down. Okay? The next one now will be rotational. And on this one, I like to present the idea of actually moving the body sideways, what we would call head movement in actual combat. And that, when we say head movement, we don't mean just moving the head. Although some of my students, get a bit silly, like me. But anyway, the point would be now when I rotate on the balls of the feet, it's not to keep my spine perfectly straight because it really hasn't done anything in regards to shifting. Basically, that's like screwing yourself into the ground. So you want to shift the weight, basically work on a shoulder roll movement. Okay? And all of these shifts should have offensive and defensive application into the shift. Okay? So rotation. Heel toe. Other side. Heel toe. Then the lifting and setting down of the heels. Then the lifting and setting down of the heels. Then rotational. So now if I'm going offensive on rotational, I can choose to keep the spine more upright, or I can go ahead and still include the shifting over or the leaning of the body. Okay, so that's just like a little introduction into shifting. Both, how can you say, more vertically shifting and also rotational shifting. Okay, so now what I'll get into next is actually being in an on-guard stance. And we'll talk about the closed and open stance first to begin with. So closed means, can you see my feet there? Yeah, you can. 30-degree turn in the front foot, lined up with the center of my rear foot, the center of the arch. So this is closed and quite narrow. The open stance will be turned, the rear foot at a 45, and come up about 4 inches this way. So this is the stance I'm going to be using to show the shifting combinations here. All right, so what I'm going to work on first, basically, is from 50-50 weight distribution to shift the weight to the front foot, but just to turn the rear foot. And all I want to do is turn from my bladed position, whichever angle that may be, 30 to 45 degrees facing, to a 90, okay? Which is basically just lining up your shoulder here, your shoulder and your hip. But with the weight shift coming from 50-50 all to the front foot. Okay? The next one I'm going to do is basically turning both feet backward to the left on the balls of the feet, and again going into a shoulder roll position here like this. Okay? Then what I'll do is go from one extreme to the next extreme this way. Okay, which is rotating the front foot, the rear foot, to the angle that I'm facing the forward right. So now I'm basically using a diagonal pattern this way. And I'm shifting backwards on that 45 and forward on that 45. And you can see that they can be actually shoulder roll evasions, or they could be striking. And the tool, can change. This one, where the weight turned on the rear foot, is good for the lead uppercut here. Okay, so I can go uppercut and hook, cross, uppercut and hook, cross, uppercut and hook. Okay? So basically we have three. Turning of the rear, turning of both, and then turning of both back again like this. Okay? You can add whatever tools you want. You can begin to go into defense plus counter plus counter. Okay? You can go offense, offense, counter, counter. Okay? So what I did just then is went into a bob and weave movement. So still with the same reference point, I can go to the outside right, to the outside left, and under as well here. Okay? So backward, side, under, and under. Hook, hook, uppercut, bob and weave, hook, hook, uppercut, shoulder roll, cross, uppercut, hook. So you can mix it up however you want. The next thing we'll talk about is partial stepping. So right now the stance that I'm in, the more open stance, facilitates a few things. The right forward angle and left backward angle as shifting points. Okay. However, once I begin to step laterally or on the other two diagonal lines, I will need to take a partial step to maintain my proper balance. Okay? So what we'll do here is we'll start it with the same. I'll take a partial step to my left forward angle here and do a shoulder roll. Okay? And then come back to center. And then I'll step backward diagonal this way and do a shoulder roll and come back to center. So 1 and 2, 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 1 and 2. Again, these can be punches as well. Okay? So the idea is to have offensive and defensive capability. Here I'm covering or shielding. Okay? Here I'm slipping or shoulder rolling. Here I'm punching or punching. Okay? Now, a couple of the other interesting factors in regards to striking on the diagonals is that if I step back on this line from a very close posture, I can begin to empty out here and fill it with a hook or fill it with this one. Okay? When I step forward, it's obvious this way. Okay? Or it simply can be a load up to counter from the other way. See what I mean? Slip, load up, hit. Slip, load up, hit. Or simultaneous and simultaneous. All right? So that's the idea behind it. So back to my point. My point is, if I back off a little further from it now and start to just use rear straights or crosses, I have my forward diagonal on this line, pop, partial step. I have my forward diagonal on this side, pop, partial step. And the unique ones are the partial step retreats. So unlike the turning in the direction of the step, this is actually a turning in the opposite direction or facing the line of the attack as I hit. Okay, and then this one is a smaller step. Because this is my front foot, this is a larger step. But because this is my rear foot, this must be a smaller step. Hook, cross, elbow, elbow. Okay, so again, the idea is that how do I do my rotation? Back to the first one, the shifting one. In regards to having slipped backwards or snapped backwards, to load up with the rear foot and simply lift and set down the heels, it's quite obvious. Okay. In regards to this heel-toe rolling, that actually is an introduction to the idea of doing the push-off step and landing heel-toe. All right. So its use actually will require either broken rhythm or a full step, and we'll get into that in future lessons. Okay. Because again, the theme here is that shifting the weight and turning, half stepping, being able to do that with striking, being able to do that with striking. Okay, avoid, strike, avoid, strike, bob and weave, strike, and so on and so forth. Okay. Again, some of the points you want to remember. Proper structure, not only in the stance itself, but the structure of the body. Tucked pelvis, chin down, hands central. One of the things about Western boxing's influence on what we do, but also some Southern Chinese influence, is the dinosaur arm thing. So when I shift and turn, basically I want dinosaur arms because they're accessible for defensive movements and also defensive access of the guns to strike with at all times. Okay? So, the lateral partial steps are great ways to hook. Now I'm going lateral with the movements. Okay? Again, they can be offensive in nature on the step, or they could also be evasions plus load up, papang, or what we call broken rhythm. Papang. Kalimaska? Okay. So I think that's going to be our little test for today. See how the volume is and all that. So feel free to ask any questions on clarification. It won't be live, but I'll still be on and I'll still be answering. And we can address some of the answers to these questions in future videos as well. Signing out from the Tao of Satyajit. It's about probably 90 degrees and very humid. Toodaloo.